Today we will learn about FactoryTalk VantagePoint reporting for FactoryTalk View SE data and alarm logs. We will give an overview presentation and demonstrate how easily to connect and report on FactoryTalk View SE data sources using FactoryTalk VantagePoint. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Mosseri of Rockwell Automation. Jennifer?
Hi, welcome to the presentation on integrating FactoryTalk View data sources into FactoryTalk VantagePoint. My name is Jennifer Mosseri. I work for Rockwell Automation on our customer success team. Basically, I focus on our manufacturing intelligence products, which includes FactoryTalk VantagePoint. In today's agenda, we're going to go through a brief overview of the products that we're going to be discussing, and then I'm going to go ahead and go through the various data sources that FactoryTalk View has that VantagePoint is capable of connecting to. Finally, I'm going to provide some basic information and a brief demo on how to view some of the VantagePoint reporting content from the FactoryTalk View SE client. Please note that during the presentation, I'm going to list several different answer IDs or tech notes that go along with each connectivity solution. If you don't catch the answer ID as I go through the slides, I'm actually going to have a list of them during the question and answer section of the call that you could write down at that time. So to start off, I'm basically assuming that most folks on the call are actually familiar with our FactoryTalk View SE HMI product. This presentation is going to focus specifically on FactoryTalk View SE and not on other versions of View. While there is the ability to connect to some of the same features using other View products, at this time all the connectivity solutions that I'm going to focus on have been created and tested specifically for FactoryTalk View SE. For those of you that aren't familiar with FactoryTalk VantagePoint, VantagePoint is a tool that is capable of providing unified access to almost any manufacturing or plant data source. After the initial connection to the data source is made, end users no longer need to go out to individual data sources for information. They can create dashboards, trends, and Excel-based reports based on the data sources that have already been configured. Once those reports are created, they're able to publish them to a VantagePoint web portal that can be used plant-wide by any users without any software-installed clients. In this presentation, I'm going to go ahead and focus on the connectivity from VantagePoint to the View SE data sources. So the first data source that I'm going to look at is the FactoryTalk View SE HMI tags. So FactoryTalk View SE HMI tags are part of the FactoryTalk View system. They're actually part of the HMI server itself, and what they are tags that can hold additional information that's not typically available in a data server. So this would include items like security, scaling, limits, and descriptions. All FactoryTalk View SE HMI tags are actually automatically made available by FactoryTalk Live Data, and since FactoryTalk VantagePoint is a FactoryTalk-enabled product, VantagePoint can connect to FactoryTalk Live Data very easily. This means that both versions of VantagePoint are able to use the solution, both VantagePoint and VantagePoint EMI. It's built into the product, and it's very easy to configure using a very simple wizard. So basically what I'm going to go ahead and do is switch over to my demo system and give you a brief overview of what my demo system actually is, and then show you how we can connect to FactoryTalk View SE HMI tags. So this is my demo system. Basically what this is composed of is a FactoryTalk View SE HMI system and a FactoryTalk VantagePoint server. What you're looking at right now is my FactoryTalk View SE client. It's just a basic integration client that I've created that shows us some information about what's going on in the View SE system so that we can correlate it to the VantagePoint connectivity when I show you that. So the first thing I'm going to do is select View SE HMI tags. And what you're going to see here is that there's 6 tags in my system that have been created as HMI tags, 3 analog and 3 digital tags. The data for these tags is coming from a simulator controller system. It's basically just a bunch of timers that are simulating some basic data that we can see in reports. Now, if I want to bring this data into VantagePoint, I go to my FactoryTalk VantagePoint Manager. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with FactoryTalk VantagePoint Manager is where you actually configure your FactoryTalk VantagePoint system. There's 2 main aspects to the manager. One is the My Enterprise level, and the other is the system level. System level is where you configure all of your data sources for FactoryTalk VantagePoint. Once you have all those created and you have VantagePoint configured, you really don't need to go into the system level anymore. My Enterprise is where you do all of your reporting. So under My Enterprise, you can create folders and tree structures that look like your plant, that look like your data, your process, and make the web portal look like however you want it to look. This is where you put all your reporting content. This is where you put your tags. This is where you put all the information that you want users to see. Right now, we actually need to go ahead and create that back-end connection to the View SE HMI tags. So I'm going to go ahead and go under System and look at my sources. Under Sources, you're going to see a list of all the different sources that VantagePoint is capable of connecting to. These all come with the product, although some do require licensing. but as I said before, FactoryTalk is included since that's connections to Rockwell products. So if I go ahead and go under FactoryTalk, if I want to import tags, all I have to do is right-click on the FactoryTalk directory and select Import. Now this is going to be the wizard that walks me through what I want to import. I get 3 simple choices right away. I can either import FactoryTalk Live Data tags, FactoryTalk Historian SC tags, or I could import my live alarms and events information, which we're going to do a little bit later. But for the time being, FactoryTalk View HMI tags are part of the live data tag structures. Now I get the option between either importing simple tags or ControlLogix UDT structures. Since we're going to be importing HMI tags, we're just going to use the simple tags option. And the next dialog basically gives me an overview of my FactoryTalk directory. So if I go ahead and browse down under my FactoryTalk VantagePoint app, which is the name of my FactoryTalk directory, I have an area named Integration, and then I have 3 folders. Demo, HMI tags, and System are 2 folders that are coming out of the HMI system. Demo HMI tags basically houses those 6 tags I showed you earlier, the 3 analog and the 3 digital tags. That's the only folder I want to import, so I'm going to go ahead and add this folder over to the right side. I'm going to select Next. The next option I get is the option to filter what I'm importing. So I could have a folder out there that has thousands of tags in it, but I might only want to bring in a subset of those tags. So now I have the option to filter what tags are being brought into the system. One important thing to note is that when I say bring in tags to the system, I'm not actually importing any data into VantagePoint. Basically, I'm creating a reference in VantagePoint to data that exists out in the control system somewhere. So VantagePoint isn't actually storing anything for me. It's just linking to the existing tags and then allowing you to do reporting based on those tags. I'm not going to do any filtering since I want to import all 6 of my tags. So all I have to do is click Finish, and I'm done with the wizard. Not many tags, so it only takes a second to import. And when I select OK, I now have a structure under my FactoryTalk directory. And if I go ahead and browse down through the same structure we saw before, I see my Demo HMI tags folder, which is an HMI tags folder in my FactoryTalk View SE system. And I see the 6 tags that have been imported. I could select any one of these tags and immediately see under its properties that I now have a live data value. And if I go ahead and click on it again, you're going to see that that value update, which means we are getting live data from the View SE HMI system. I can also throw this value into trends or reports. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my VantagePoint trend tool. This is a light tool, so it requires no install. And if I go ahead and browse under the same exact source that I was under before, under FactoryTalk, to my Demo HMI tags folder, I can take any one of these tags and put them into trend. Now, because I don't have any historical data attached to this tag, you're not actually going to see a whole lot in trend right away. What you will see is an X over here on the side, and if you mouse over that X, you're going to see the current value for when that trend was updated, as well as a timestamp. What I can do is I can put this trend into run mode. So if I come up here and click this little exclamation mark with the arrows around it, you're going to see live data values actually start to populate in the trend. What this is going to give me is an overview of what's happening live on my system if I don't happen to have these tags collected anywhere. If I did have these tags being collected in a Historian SD system, VantagePoint would be able to automatically link the 2 together. What's happening right now is the tag values are being cached in the trend and saved for the time being. If I stop and start this trend, take it in and out of live mode, those values would actually go away and the collection would start over again. So that concludes the demo on importing FactoryTalk View SE HMI tags. It's a very simple process to just run the wizard. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my presentation now. And you'll see a picture graphic here. If I had let that trend run for about 5 minutes, this is about what it would look like if I had several tags on the trend, just to give you an idea. It does start to show a graphical representation of what your data is coming into the system. So the next item I'm going to talk about is FactoryTalk View's ability to import data from its data logs. So FactoryTalk View SE is capable of collecting data into a component that it calls data logs. It stores that data into a flat file format and is also capable of storing the data into an ODBC database if you choose to. Our connectivity solution for FactoryTalk VantagePoint requires you to save that data into a SQL database. In order to connect from VantagePoint to the USC data logs, you need to have one SQL database connector and FactoryTalk VantagePoint EMI. And then it does require the FactoryTalk VantagePoint DB Builder solution, which I'm going to briefly describe in the next slide. But basically, a connectivity solution has been created for you. It's available on the Support Center. The answer ID is listed on the slide. Basically, what that solution is going to do is going to give you a couple of page document on how to configure a database connection from FactoryTalk VantagePoint to the database that's holding the ViewSC data log. And then it's going to provide you an import file for FactoryTalk VantagePoint for the DB Builder solution. Now, the DB Builder solution allows you to create tag providers. Just a little bit of an overview. Tag providers are FactoryTalk VantagePoint tags that can be used in trends and reports whose data actually comes from a SQL query. The tags are associated with SQL queries in VantagePoint, which provide time series data. This allows the tags to be used in trends, Excel reports, and dashboards. When I start to mention SQL, sometimes users get a little bit nervous, but really, in this case, installing and implementing a solution requires no programming ability. Basically, we already know the structure of the ViewSC data log database, and it's always the same every time. So what we've done is we've created some very simple queries for you that will work on every database that holds ViewSC data logs. And all you're really going to have to do is import those into the application once you have the DB Builder solution set up. The tech note listed on this page is actually the DB Builder solution downloads available in the knowledge base. It installs a small application to VantagePoint, which acts as another data source, and we're going to take a look at that in a minute. And the instructions for configuring DB Builder to work with the FactoryTalk ViewSC HMI tag providers are included in that first tech note I talked about on the last page. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my demo so I could show you the data log connectivity. And coming back to my ViewSC HMI client, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the data logs that I've set up. So basically, I do have data logs set up for those 3 analog and 3 digital tags we saw in the last example that are HMI tags. And the trend that you're seeing right now is the value that's actually coming out of those data logs. Now, if I switch back over to VantagePoint, as I mentioned before, DB Builder is a solution that's already been installed on the system, and it's already been somewhat pre-configured for us. So I've already created a link to the SQL database. All that is in the documentation for that connectivity solution. It's just a step-by-step process. It takes a couple pages. It's a couple pages process. It takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes to set up at the most. Once you have this set up, all you need to do is go ahead and edit the DB Builder source, and you're going to edit your tag definitions. So these definitions are already imported in here, but if this were completely blank, all I would have to do for the first time setup is come down here and select Import Definitions. This is the file that I have on my desktop. This is actually what comes directly out of the tech notes provided for you. And if I go ahead and hit Open, it's going to create these 3 tag definitions, one for analog tags, one for digital tags, and one for string tags. What these queries do that you see is go out to your FactoryTalk SC HMI data log database and look for any tags that it stores, and then creates a tag that matches those tags in the data log in FactoryTalk VantagePoint for reporting. And then what happens in the background is every time you have an analog tag that you're looking for history for, it's going to run this query behind the scenes in VantagePoint, blind to the user. The user never actually sees that query. So if I go ahead and hit Close and hit Synchronize, that's actually building my tags. It was that quick. It built my 6 tags for me. I hit Finish. I'm going to go up under my enterprise where I have these tags saved, or where these tags have actually been imported by that database builder. And you're going to see those same 6 tags that we saw before. The difference is that these 6 tags aren't live data tags. These 6 tags are database tags. So these 6 tags have those queries that we just imported behind them. And if I come back over into Trend and start a brand new trend, I'm going to select New, and take a look at those tags that are coming out of the data logs, all I have to do is throw one of those tags on a trend, and now you see all the historical data behind it. So I can sit here and change it to the last hour and add a couple more tags, and you're going to see all that data coming into trend. You can also open up Microsoft Excel and create Excel reports that do history functions and do any calculations on those tags that you want. So the next feature that we're going to talk about is FactoryTalk Alarms and Events connectivity. FactoryTalk Alarms and Events is meant to provide a consistent view of alarms which have occurred throughout the entire FactoryTalk system on any FactoryTalk-enabled product. Because FactoryTalk VantagePoint Alarms and Events is part of the FactoryTalk system and VantagePoint is FactoryTalk-enabled, VantagePoint is able to connect to the FactoryTalk Alarms and Events database very easily. This means it's available in both FactoryTalk VantagePoint and VantagePoint EMI and does not require a SQL license. It's actually built into the connector, so the wizard that we were looking at earlier for importing the live data tags also had an option for alarms and events. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but all you have to do is run through that wizard again using the alarms and events option, and it's very, very simple to configure. Basically what it does is it goes into the Alarms and Events SQL database and adds several queries that are used for reporting, and then it adds several default reports to the FactoryTalk VantagePoint system that allow you to do basic reports on alarms and events. On top of those basic reports that are added, which are actually 2 default Excel reports, we have an update that's available in the knowledge base. The answer ID is listed on this slide. Basically, what that update does is provides a slight improvement over the existing 2 Excel reports that come with the product, and then also adds additional dashboard reports. It actually adds 5 of them, and I'll show you that in a demo in a minute. So I'll go ahead and switch over to our demo system. And if I go back to our FactoryTalk View client, I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at our alarms and events. And you'll see that these are the alarms and events coming into the system. Basically, they are based on a simulator controller that's running in the background that's just randomly generating manufacturing types of alarms for us. And if I go back into VantagePoint, I'm going to go back under my FactoryTalk connector, and I'm going to do another import. And you're going to see that one of my options is FactoryTalk Alarms and Events. And if I select Next, FactoryTalk VantagePoint already knows where the FactoryTalk Alarms and Events database is. This is because the database connectivity is actually configured in our FactoryTalk system, and VantagePoint is able to connect to FactoryTalk. So if I went and selected this database, all I would have to do to configure the solution is hit Finish, and it would automatically go through, create all the scripts, and create all the default reports for me. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out since I've already actually ran through that process. But where those reports come in are under the local host, under your FactoryTalk directory. You'll see Alarms and Events. If I browse down to alarm reports, you'll see that I now have 7 reports in my system. So the 2 reports, the 2 Excel reports that have been created, those are automatically created with the process that we just ran, the import process. The 5 dashboards, as I mentioned before, come from that additional tech note. It's just a real quick install you run on your system, and then adds those dashboards as well. So I'm going to switch over to our FactoryTalk Vantage portal so we can actually take a look at some of these reports. So these reports are the alarms and events reports that we just saw. The one that is open right now is the FactoryTalk Alarms and Events Hourly Alarms Report. Basically what this is doing is going through your Alarms and Events database and taking an alarm summary for each hour and then graphing it. If I go ahead and switch over to the frequency report, the frequency report is a little bit different. It actually provides the top 10 most frequent alarms for any time period you choose. And it might just take a second to load here, but you'll see it connecting to the database. And you might have noticed that there was a little loading symbol up at the top that let you know that it was still pulling in the data. But basically, every single report that we had that's a dashboard has this report filter on the side, which allows you to do some configuration options on these reports. So you can select different time ranges on the fly. So I could select perhaps the last 10 minutes, and you'll see the data change right away to reflect what you just selected. You can also set a specific start and end time if you're looking for that. You can change your priority, so I could change it to say I only want to see high alarms instead of all of the alarms. And I might only want to see alarms that come out of the filler. So if I go ahead and type in fill for the alarm name, it's actually going to change to only show filler alarms that have happened in the last 10 minutes. The other thing that does show me is details about each alarm. So right now, the filling valve 3A is the currently selected alarm. You'll notice in the grid below, you actually see the 3 entries for when that alarm actually occurred and the times that they occurred, the times they were inactive. The alarm at the top that doesn't have an inactive time means that that alarm is still currently active. If I want to look at a different alarm's history, all I have to do is come up into the chart and select the bar chart for a different alarm, and you'll see that the alarm results are filtered based on the alarm that you selected. So basically, of the 5 dashboard reports, they all work very similarly. The tech note that I mentioned does have an explanation of what each report does, what its features are, and what its capabilities are. The other 2 reports are basically summary reports that are Excel report documents. The most frequent alarms report looks very similar to the one that we're looking at. It's just a little bit of a different way of looking at it through an Excel report. And then the alarms and time period report will actually list all alarms with all of the details about every single alarm during any time period that you select. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my main presentation. And the last connectivity topic that I want to talk about today is how to connect to View SE HMI alarms. So View SE alarms, which we typically refer to as classic or legacy alarms, are alarms that are part of the View SE HMI system, which are only available to FactoryTalk View SE. These alarms are normally stored in a flat file and can be also stored to an ODBC database if you choose. Again, very similar to our data log solution, we do require that you store the data to a SQL database in order for this to work. It will require a FactoryTalk VantagePoint EMI and a single database SQL database connector license. The solution is not currently complete, so it's still in progress. I'm going to show you a quick demo of some of the reports that we're looking at making for the solution. But we do expect it to be available on the knowledge base sometime in the fourth quarter. And basically, it's going to be very similar to the data log solution, where it's going to provide some instructions and configuration files, perhaps, for how to set up a connection to the SQL database and how to import the various reports and queries that you're going to need to get the alarm data out of that database. So switching back to my demo one more time. I'm going to go ahead and select these two HMI reports that are under the HMI alarms. Basically, active alarms is an Excel report that's giving you a list of all the current HMI, VUSC HMI alarms that are active on the system. And it might take a second or two to pop up depending on whether or not the database is being loaded right now. But you'll see that right now there's several alarms that are active, basically all of them. And if I go ahead and go to alarm summary, that's actually going to be an alarm history during a specific period of time. So right now the report is set to default at all alarms for the past hour. I also have the ability to actually change parameters for this Excel report. So if I come up to the top here and change it to the parameters tab, I can filter by time period and also by tag name. So I can go ahead and say I only want to see the last 10 minutes of alarms, and I only want to see digital alarms. And then when I select Generate Report, that's actually going to filter out those alarms based on what I've selected. So basically what we're expecting when the solution is complete is to have probably several more reports available. They'll probably be very similar to the types of reports that you see under the Alarms and Events connector. So they'll probably show the top 10 alarms frequency-wise and duration, and maybe some other standing alarm reports as well. So that concludes the connectivity portion of the presentation. The one last thing I am going to go ahead and mention is how to actually look at FactoryTalk VantagePoint view from a FactoryTalk View SC client. Typically, a lot of users will have reports and maybe even trends that they can see through a web portal, but they want users to be able to access those trends and reports from a View client as well, and there is a way to do that. Basically, the method that we recommend is to embed an Internet Explorer ActiveX control into your View SC client display. There's a tech note that actually gives you a lot of information on doing this. Basically, all you're doing is passing in a URL that goes out to the FactoryTalk VantagePoint server and selects which report or which tags for a trend or how you want your report or trend content to look. And using a URL, you can customize all of that. That's all included in the tech note. And the tech note also includes three View SC graphics displays, which I'm going to go ahead and demo right now. Basically, these are provided to help you learn how to integrate FactoryTalk VantagePoint into View if you want to do that. So going back to my View demo, I'm going to go ahead and select on this last option, which is integrating FactoryTalk VantagePoint content into View. This is the first of the three screens that you're going to be given. So this is the main screen. This is the one that you normally browse to first. But basically, it gives you some overview information on how the integration works. And it gives you links to both a trend example and a reporting example. So if I select the trend example, basically what this graphic is a view display. The top portion that's still loading is an Internet Explorer ActiveX control. The gray area below that with the buttons is all some VBA code that was written to actually kind of help you demo how this connectivity works. And then the gray box at the very bottom is an example of the URL link. So as you select different options for how you want your trend to look, you'll actually see your URL link change, and that can help you figure out how you want to configure your URL link to look at your reports for your system. So if I come down here and select the sine wave tag, you'll see that the URL adds a tag equals and then the sine wave tag definition, and you'll see the sine wave actually populate in the trend. Very similarly, if I go back to the reports, basically this is a report viewer. Everything works the exact same way. The initial report that's brought up is actually, it looks like a trend, but it's actually a trend that's been saved as a report in FactoryTalk VantagePoint. I can go ahead and bring up the line production report, which is an Excel report. And it might take a couple seconds to come up, but basically it's going to look very much like an Excel document. So you're going to see the different worksheets at the bottom that have been rendered in the web portal. And this is an Excel chart that you're looking at first. And you could also switch over to the Data tab and look at the raw data that's behind that Excel chart. So that basically gives you an idea of how to integrate FactoryTalk VantagePoint into View if you are looking for that. So with that, that concludes our presentation on integrating FactoryTalk View SC data sources into VantagePoint. I guess if anyone has any questions or answers, that would be the time.
Or we can go ahead and open up the poll or open up the phone.
Okay. At this time, I would like to remind everyone, if you would like to ask a question, *1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. There are no questions in the queue at this time. I turn the call back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. If you do think of any questions, please send them through to our channel at ra.rockwell.com. I put our email in the chat, and I can filter those along to Jennifer. And please take a moment to fill in the poll with any topic suggestions for the future. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for presenting, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.